Hello there, it's Val and Frank here, ready for another story time. I hope that you're all well and that you're all safe. So, as usual, you might have a clue, I've got my Paddington ears on, so it's time for our serial story. And of course, we've got our friend Paddington. Paddington's really excited actually because, do you know what? Frank has made him his own hot chocolate mug. How good is that? Look, I'll show you. Look. There's Frank's mug. And there's Paddington's. Mind, I am kind of wondering, because Frank, your mug looks a lot bigger than Paddington's. I think that is probably because Frank likes more hot chocolate. He's a terror. Right. Now story today, Paddington goes to the theatre. Now, I do have a little bit of bad news because we've actually reached the last chapter of our Paddington stories. So that's the bad news, but the good news is if you listen to all of the chapter, right at the end, you're going to get a chance to pick the next serial story that we read. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that next time. So let's get on with the story. Paddington goes to the theatre. Oh, and you know what? Hang on, I'll sit you two here. There we go, sit them there. If he's going to the theatre, he might need his theatre glasses so he can see what's going on. Right, I'll put my glasses on now. Less of the chat, Val, and more of the story. Let's get going. Paddington goes to the theatre. Here we are. The Browns were all very excited. Mr. Brown had been given tickets for a box at the theatre, and it was the first night of a brand new play, and the leading part was being taken by the world-famous actor Sir Seeley Bloom. Even Paddington became infected with the excitement. He made several journeys to his friend, Mr. Gruber, to have the theatre explained to him. Mr. Gruber thought he was very lucky to be going to the first night of a new play. All sorts of famous people will be there, he said. I don't suppose many bears have that sort of opportunity in a lifetime. Mr. Gruber lent Paddington several second-hand books about the theatre. He was rather a slow reader, but there were lots of pictures, and in one of them, a big cut-out model of a stage sprang up every time he opened the pages. Oh, I'm guessing that would have been very useful, Frank, wouldn't it? Definitely, if you want to learn about the theatre. Where were we? Well, Paddington decided that when he grew up, he wanted to be an actor. He took to standing at the dressing table and striking poses in the mirror, just like he'd seen them in the books. He must have gone like that, mustn't he? Mrs. Brown had her own thoughts on the subject. Oh, I do hope it's a nice play, she said to Mrs. Bird. You know what Paddington's like. He does take these things so seriously. Oh, well, said Mrs. Bird. I shall sit at home and listen to the wireless in peace and quiet. But it'll be an experience for him, and he does like experiences so. Besides, he's been very good lately. I know, said Mrs. Brown. That's what worries me. As it turned out, the play itself was the least of Mrs. Brown's worries. Paddington was unusually silent all the way to the theatre. It was the first time that he'd been out after dark, and it was the first time that he'd seen all the bright lights of London. Mr. Brown pointed out all the famous landmarks as they drove past in the car. Paddington was pleased to find that it was all as Mr. Gruber had described to him, even down to the commissionaire at the theatre, who opened the door for them and saluted as they entered the foyer. Paddington returned the salute with a wave of his paw and then sniffed. Everything was painted red and gold, and the theatre had such a nice, warm, friendly sort of smell. Well, there was a slight upset, though, at the cloakroom when he found that he had to pay in order to leave his duffel coat and his suitcase. The woman at the counter turned quite nasty when Paddington asked for his things back. Oh dear. Poor Paddington. She was still talking about it in a very loud voice as the attendant led them along a passage towards their seats. At the entrance to the box, the attendant paused. "Programme, sir?" she said to Paddington. "Yes, please," said Paddington, taking 5. "Thank you very much." "And would you like coffee in the interval, sir?" she asked. Paddington's eyes glistened. "Oh, yes, please," he said, imagining it was some sort of kind thought on the part of the theatre. He tried to push his way past, but the attendant barred the way. "That'll be £7.50, she said. £1 for each of the programmes and 50p for the coffee. Paddington looked as though he could hardly believe his ears. £7.50, he repeated. £7.50. It's all right, Paddington, said Mr. Brown, trying to avoid yet another fuss. It's my treat. You go in and sit down. Paddington obeyed like a shot, but he gave the attendant some very queer looks while she arranged some cushions for his seat in the front row. All the same, he was pleased to see that she had given him the one nearest the stage. He'd already sent a postcard to his Aunt Lucy with a carefully drawn copy of a plan of the theatre, which he'd found in one of Mr. Gruber's books, and a small cross in one corner marked My Sheet. The theatre was quite full, and Paddington waved down to all the people below, much to Mr. and Mrs. Brown's embarrassment. Several of them pointed and waved back. I do wish he wouldn't be quite so friendly, Mr. Brown whispered. Wouldn't you like to take off your duffel coat, said Mr. Brown. It'll be very cold when you go out again. Paddington climbed up and stood on his chair. I think perhaps I will, he said. It is getting rather warm. Judy started to help him off with it. Mind my marmalade sandwich, cried Paddington as she placed it on the ledge in front of him. But it was too late. He looked around guiltily. I don't know why I did Paddington as Mickey Mouse there. Maybe it's these ears. Going to Val's head. Crikey, said Jonathan. It's fallen on someone's head. Oh, Paddington, your marmalade sandwich has dropped and splattered on somebody's head. Oh no. It's the man with the bald head. And you know what? He looks jolly cross. Oh, Paddington, said Mrs. Brown. Do you have to bring marmalade sandwiches into the theatre? It's all right, said Paddington cheerfully. I've got some more in my upper pocket. If anyone wants one, they're a little bit squashed because I've been sat on them. But, well, there seems to be some sort of row going on down below, said Mr. Brown. Some chap just waved his fist at me. What's all this about marmalade sandwiches? Mr. Brown was a bit slow on the uptake sometimes. Nothing, dear, said Mrs. Brown hastily. She decided to let the matter drop because sometimes it was much easier in the long run. In any case, Paddington was having a great struggle with himself over some opera glasses. Oh dear, and what's happening here? He had just seen a little box in front of him marked opera glasses 20p. These are opera glasses. You see? I'll bring them a little bit closer so you can see. That's it. You take them to the theatre so that if you're far away from the audience, probably like Val would be because she'd get the cheap seats, you can see what's going on. There. Oh, Brown's come back. Nearly lost him. Oh, and now I'm sat on Paddington. Oh, there he is. I don't think much of these, he said a moment later, looking through them at the audience. Everyone looks a bit smaller. You've got them the wrong way round, silly, said Jonathan. Well, I still don't think much of them, said Paddington, turning them around. I wouldn't have bought them if I'd known. Still, he said, they might come in useful next time. Just as he began to speak, the overture came to an end and the curtain rose. Da, da, da. The scene was the living room of a large house, and Sir Seeley Bloom took the part of the village squire. That's a posh person in the village. And he was pacing up and down. There was a round of applause, hooray, from the audience. You don't take them home, whispered Judy. You have to put them back where you found them. What? What? Cried Paddington. Several calls of shh came from the darkened theatre as Sir Seeley Bloom paused and looked pointedly in the direction of the Browns' box. Do you mean to say? Words failed Paddington. 20 pence, he said bitterly. That's 2 buns worth. He turned his gaze on Sir Seeley Bloom. Sir Seeley Bloom looked rather irritable. He didn't like first nights, and this one in particular had started very badly. He had a nasty feeling about it. He much preferred playing the dashing hero, where he had the sympathy of the audience. But in this play, he was the villain. Being the first night of the play, he wasn't at all sure of his lines. And to make matters worse, he had arrived at the theatre only to discover that the prompt boy was missing. Oh no, the prompt boy's so important, isn't it, Frank? In case you forget your lines, definitely need him. And there was nobody else to take his place. And then there was that disturbance that was going on in the stalls just before the curtain went up. Something to do with a marmalade sandwich. Of course, that was all nonsense, but still it was very disturbing. And then there was this noisy crowd up in the box. He sighed to himself. Oh, it was obviously going to be one of those nights. But if Cecilia Bloom's heart was not in the play, Paddington certainly was. He soon forgot about his wasted 20p and devoted all his attention to the plot. He decided quite early on that he did not like Sir Seeley Bloom, and he stared at him through his opera glasses. Ooh. I bet you Sir Seeley Bloom was getting that hot feeling on his neck, you know, when Paddington gives his hard stare. Oh heck, I've lost my place. I'll just see if I can find it again. He followed his every move, and then at the end of the first act, Cecilia, in the part of the hard-hearted father, turned his daughter out into the world without a penny. Paddington stood up on his chair and waved the programme indignantly at the stage. Paddington was a surprising bear in lots of ways. He had a strong sense of right and wrong, and as the curtain came down, he placed his opera glasses firmly on the ledge and climbed off his seat. I think that Paddington Frank means business, doesn't he? He's seen something that he doesn't quite like, and he's going to put it right, Paddington style. Are you enjoying the play, Paddington? Asked Mr. Brown. Well, it's very interesting, said Paddington. He had a very determined note to his voice, and Mrs. Brown looked at him sharply. She was beginning to recognise that tone, and it worried her. Where are you going, dear? She asked as he made for the door of the box. Oh, just for a walk, said Paddington vaguely. Well, don't be too long, she called. You don't want to miss any of the second act. Oh, don't fuss, Mary, said Mr. Brown. I expect he just wants to stretch his legs or something. He's probably gone out to the cloakroom. But at that moment, Paddington was not going in the direction of the cloakroom, but towards a door leading to the back of the theatre, marked Private Artists Only. Now, artist doesn't mean like painty artists. It means the actors. As he pushed the door open and passed through, he immediately found himself in an entirely different world. There was no red plush seats, and everything was very bare. Lots of ropes hung down from the roof. Pieces of scenery were stacked against the walls, and everybody seemed in a great hurry. Normally, Paddington would have been most interested in everything, but now he had a very purposeful look on his face. Oh dear, I don't like the sound of this. What are you up to, Paddington? Oh. Seeing a man bending over some scenery, he walked over, tapped him on the shoulder and said, "Excuse me, can you tell me where the man is?" We'll have to leave it there. We've left it at a very exciting stage of that chapter, haven't we? I wonder what Paddington's up to. I'm guessing he's going to put things right, isn't he? Well, we'll leave with a little Paddington thought of the day. And this time, Paddington is, let's see. Oh, he's being positive. Well, that's a good thing to be, isn't it? Let's see what he's being positive about. I'll show you the picture. Here we go. There we go. Oh, it says, he wasn't the sort of bear who believed in doing things by halves. Oh, look at him. Oh, he's certainly not doing things by halves there, is he? He's enjoying himself there, isn't he? Right. So, we'll say bye-bye. Bye-bye to Frank. Bye-bye to Paddington. And we'll see you very soon for the end of that chapter. Now remember to bring that opera glasses. See you soon. Bye. Bye-bye.